13 years ago, one of the greatest horror movies of modern times was released to the public. It has since been named the scariest horror movie, and is known for having one of the most iconic jump scares of all time. Following the success of the first movie, which grossed over $100 million worldwide on a budget of $1.5 million, Insdious has grown into a film series that continues to terrify audiences over a decade later. Of course, in my humble opinion, the first film stands out as the best, since it started it all, but I think the sequels have done well to continue the legacy. While it may not be for everyone, here are some reasons to love. Please note, there will be spoilers for all of the Insidious movies, so consider this your warning. Into the further you go. When I initially saw the trailer for the first Insidious, I'll be honest, I wasn't really impressed. By the time I finally watched the movie, I went into it with pretty low expectations, but that was quickly turned around. As soon as that title screen hits, it was so sudden and so chilling, and it really set the tone for what was to come. And at that point, I was like, maybe this movie has a little more to it, but I wasn't wholly convinced. I remember at the time watching it with my family and a friend, and we were all kind of joking around at the beginning. Even at one point got distracted to eat dinner. But as we were eating at the table, it got to the scene with the baby monitor, when she's listening because she's hearing the voices. And after that big jump scare, we all kind of like looked at each other and were like, okay, we need to go back and rewatch this. And I think collectively, we all knew that this movie was going to be a lot better than any of us had expected. I really enjoyed the flow of the first movie. And even in the behind the scenes, they talk about how it goes from a haunted house movie to a possession movie to an astral projection movie. And you can really feel those shifts in the movie. As you see the family going about their lives in this house, you can tell it's an old house, it's creaky, it makes a lot of noises. So already it's like, is it the house or is it something else? Suddenly the books are on the floor, or the box is not where it's supposed to be. And then of course after Dalton goes into his coma, that's when things start ramping up and we start to go more into the possession part of the movie. And with that we get, it's not the house that's haunted,
it's your son.
Who do you turn to for help? We go to the priest. The priest can't help. We need to find somebody else. Luckily, the mom already had experience with this. And then we learn more about the origins of it all, Josh's history, why he never took pictures, or why he rarely took pictures. And then the astral projection part of it almost feels like an adventure. Now we're going into another world, another dimension or realm. And here, Josh has to face these fiends in their territory in order to get back his son. And I do feel like the setup carries on throughout the sequels. And actually, I did notice the timestamp whenever the main character intentionally goes into the further to fight whatever is haunting them. It's all roughly around the same timestamp, somewhere around the like 1 hour 15-minute mark. So it is a little formulaic in that sense. They all follow that same flow of the haunting building up and then going to go save the day, right? So while there are still plenty of scares and it is terrifying, I do like that horror adventure aspect to all the movies. One thing that I noticed, and I don't know if this has any relevance, every movie shows a hospital. The first one, of course, it's when Dalton goes into his coma and we see him at the hospital. And then the second one, they visit the old hospital that Lorraine used to work at. And there we find out Parker Crane's past and all of that. The third one, Quinn has her accident and of course goes to a hospital. And then the fourth one, after Melissa's experience, she ends up in the hospital too. Each movie has a hospital scene, and I'm not sure what the connection is for that. Maybe it's because hospitals could have this similarity to the further of being a place between life and death. You know, in a hospital, people die, but people are also born there, and people are saved there. Maybe it is similar to the further in that sense, where, you know, there are dead souls there, there are beings that were maybe never even really alive there, and then other souls passing through. That's my guess of why they could have that. So I'm also curious to see if that will continue in the Red Door. But also, when Dalton left the hospital, it was 3 months later. And then when Quinn left the hospital, it was 3 weeks later. So there's this recurring 3. I wonder if that has some meaning too. I know they say like the devil's time is 3:30 or 3 o'clock or something. I'm not sure if it's related in that sense. I don't know. Let me know if you have an idea about that. One thing I did appreciate is that there are actual histories and backstories for a lot of the monsters in the Insidious films. While some of it is left for us to interpret, we do get to know a lot about these fiends tormenting our protagonist. Primarily, this is seen in the second one, when we get like an entire backstory on the bride in black, or the Black Bride, which is pretty terrifying, but I'll go more into that later. But we also get a little history on the wheezing man, or even the doll fiend, I think she's called. This family that was in this house in the further, and you see how they died. It just adds more depth to the story and provides a little more of an explanation on why they are doing the things they are doing, why they are haunting these people, what their motivations are. It's not just random. It's not just like because you were home, you know? Not that there's a problem with that. That is scary in and of itself. But it's not just that they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Not usually.
Let's call it the further.
In my opinion, all of the sequels are well interweaved with one another. They all connect as one major story, and it all makes sense. I'm pretty sure I heard that this wasn't intentional in the beginning, but I thought that the way that they intertwined the first and second movie was very well done, especially with the alarm scene. In the first movie, when you hear the knocking and the alarm goes off, Josh goes down to find the door open. You don't really know what's happening. You don't know if some threat has just entered. And then maybe by the end of it, you can assume it was the long-haired fiend in the baby's room. But it does leave you with that sense of terror, not knowing what the danger is or if there even is any. So then when they revisited that scene in the second one and you find out that it's actually Josh while he's in the further, in a sense it did take away some of that terror, but it also spurred completely different feelings. There was a satisfaction to getting an answer as to what actually happened during that scene, but also there's this excitement because now he's a hero. He's going in and stopping this entity from harming his baby. The further in general allows for the movies to kind of mess with time, and you see that it is more fluid and not so linear. So this allows for both the sequel and the prequels to connect their events so that it all makes sense and flows in one continuous timeline. Although it is a horror movie, and it definitely aces that part, there's also a strong sense of family and bonds throughout each of the movies, especially between a parent and a child. This adds a sense of sentimentality to each movie, and so you want to see these characters come out alive in the end. Each movie deals with different family units, and although they all have regular life struggles and difficulties, the supernatural horrors that they face end up bringing them closer together. It's nice to see and often very touching, and in every movie, the endings are satisfying, and you feel mostly good by the end, with still something left to think about. All of the movies have characters that you want to root for because they're likable and believable. As fun as it can be to try to predict who's gonna die next in certain horror movies, I would rather have a movie where I can root for the characters and hope to see them come out safely in the end. And I think each of these movies does just that. Like I said, because of their strong family units and the bonds that they share with each other, they are easy to connect to because you do see that they are just people. The first movie centers around the Lambert family, and immediately we see just how much they care for each other. We start off with Renai, who's a stay-at-home mom, and she's currently working on her dreams while taking care of her kids, and she really cares for her family. One of the first things we see her do is look through her family photo album, and then her son joins, and then they have matching pajamas. It's already so cute. Just the way that they interact with each other. And though she may seem a little mild and meek, even when she is telling her children to do something, she says please, she is still very firm and will not go down so easily, especially when her kids are in danger. She tries her best to do what she can, but she also needs help sometimes, and she's not afraid to ask for it. This means she's asking her husband, Josh, and he's a high school teacher who also cares greatly for his family. We see how good he is with his kids, but we do know that there's something off about him. For some reason, there are no childhood photos of him, and later we see that he has trouble handling stress. So there's something to his past, something a little more mysterious, but he still does well to provide and care for his loved ones. The way he supports his wife, as crazy as the things she's saying are, he believes her and he does his best to help her. Both of them are very good parents dealing with an impossibly difficult situation of having a comatose child. Obviously it's not just that, it's everything else. And even the children, they're just normal kids. Dalton being a little more adventurous, and he's the oldest child. It maybe makes little sense why he's the one that was affected, and maybe it's even his astral projection that leads him to have this more adventurous side to him. But then you have Foster, who seems a little more reserved and having to deal with it all. We see that he kind of tries to stay out of the way. They're good children, and of course the baby is so innocent. You don't want anything to happen to Callie, so you want everyone to be okay. So as things are getting more dangerous and they're not able to find a solution, then we have Lorraine come in, who's Josh's mother. She's almost this ray of light. She has some ideas because you find out this is not her first rodeo. With Lorraine comes Elise. And Elise is very much the hero of this whole series. She is in every movie. She has the most knowledge of the further and of what's happening, and she has the means to combat and stop it. So I kind of see both Elise and Lorraine as the hope in the movie. And I think the inclusion of both of these actresses, who are pretty well known in the horror world, Barbara Hershey, who plays Lorraine, who was also in The Entity, and Lynn Shay, who plays Elise, who was in A Nightmare on Elm Street, among other horror movies, really added a sense of credibility to the movie, especially the first one. Knowing that they had these titles to their name, it was another moment where I took the movie more seriously than I previously had. But of course, Elise doesn't come in by herself. She has her two sidekicks for her sidekick.
Where's that?
She's psychic. Where's sidekick?
Steven, aka Specs, and Tucker. And they are very much the comic relief, but they're not just that. They add a lot more to it. They were a nice breath of fresh air, especially after all the turmoil that had been happening up to that point. And one of the things I love is every time they meet someone new, Tucker is eating, whether it's a cupcake or a hot pocket. It's like it's something he always has to do, but it's hilarious every time. The relationship that they have with each other, as much as they bicker and squabble, it's still very caring. It's a good partnership that they have, and it's funny that you find out it is one that they chose to be together. It's not like they were both hired by Elise, like they were already a team before then. So they have a good friendship. I also liked that in both Chapter 3 and in The Last Key, we got to explore more of Elise's background and her family, and to know that she was able to get some closure before her passing. Obviously, Elise dies in the first one, but she still hangs around. She still manages to make an appearance in every movie. Especially in the second one, her appearance was very heroic. And can I just say, it is pretty great to see her beating on these horrible ghosts and demons.
Come on, bitch.
Then in the third movie, it's a prequel, when we're introduced to the Brenner family. In this family, the mother has passed away fairly recently, and so we're left with a dad, a daughter, and a son. Quinn, the daughter, who is missing her mother and tries to reach out to her, ends up contacting something else. Thus their family ends up being haunted. We do see a lot of bickering between Quinn and her father. He's struggling to take care of both of them and everything that he has to do, while he is still mourning his wife. But as things progress and as Quinn's situation gets ever more dire, it is nice to see Sean, the dad, do his best to protect his daughter, because he is having to deal with some crazy stuff. After she has her accident, to then suddenly be up on the floor above and to be woken to her screams from above his bedroom, that's a crazy thing to have to deal with. Then making sure she doesn't fall out of a window because some guy who looks like he jumped is bringing her up. I do think it's nice that at no point they tell them that they're crazy or they're making it up. Like, everyone cares enough about these other characters to believe them. Even when it is hard to believe, they want them to be better. They want to help them. They are willing to take these risks in order to do what needs to be done. And then of course in the fourth one, in The Last Key, the person asking for help is a solo guy. So at first I'm like, single people need help too. It's not only families that deserve help. And of course that ends up going awry, but the family unit ends up being Elise's family. Not only do we learn about her past and her parents and her brother, but then we find that her brother has had daughters, and so she gets to meet her nieces for the first time. And so then of course you also learn that her ability has been passed on through them, and you hope that they were able to have a few more interactions before her death. And it seemed like the tension between Elise and her brother Christian was healed. As horrible as her father was, to then find out that it wasn't him and he did care about her and he ended up helping her in the end so many years later, that was pretty touching as well. All of the movies have these touching moments that make it more than just a collection of jump scares. They're still very effective in that creep factor aspect of it. One of the ways they primarily do this is the music and the sound design. I do recommend that if you're going to watch them, if you want the real full experience, you have to watch it at a loud volume. Yes, you will be startled by the noises, but it's just so much more satisfying. To watch it at a low volume, you're missing out, in my humble opinion. A fun fact, the composer for all the films so far, Joseph Bashara, also plays the lipstick face demon. He's very involved in these films, and I feel like his work in them is masterful. From the logos, before the movie has even started, you start hearing these sounds. And I think I read it was like a rusty piano, a hammer, and file. Just something that sounds so off and distorted, already setting that tone. And then of course the title screen, the violins all going crazy. And it sounds almost like a classic horror vibe to it throughout the movie. Just a lot of like juxtaposition between the sounds. When it switches to Tiptoe to the Tulips from this beautiful song, it's very off-putting and so unsettling. Not only do they build this tension with the sounds, but also with the silence. The way that they use the silence throughout the movie is very effective. Definitely helps build those jump scares. A lot of people already know, like, it's quiet, too quiet. You start putting your guard up and you want to look out for something. It keeps you listening. Whenever they do the jump scares, they do them well. I think they do it in a way to where it happens when you least expect it. Each of the more memorable ones for me usually do come with a lot of that build up. And then when you drop your guard, they get you. An example of this in the first one, when the long-haired fiend is walking outside on the balcony, you see Renai kind of looking, and so you start looking and you're like, what's happening? What is this? Who's there? And suddenly he's inside, and they get you with that sound. I've seen this movie several times. For the first few rewatches, I knew it was coming and I would still jump. Another example is one I had mentioned before with the baby monitor. You hear the whispering and you see her leaning in and she turns it up and it's a little louder, but you can't really hear it. So then you're leaning in trying to figure out what it's saying, and then the words start to become more clear, and then it yells suddenly, and then it gets you with the sound, and then the baby starts crying. The build-up pays off. So whether you drop your guard or even if your guard is still up, they'll get you. They're very good at doing that. It adds to the fun of watching a horror movie. But bam! It's not only the music, the art production in general, the setting and the ambience of the movie. The makeup in this movie is exceptionally well done. One thing I had learned that like triggers that terror emotion within us is when something is a little off. We see something familiar, but there's something off about it. And so to us in our brain, it's like, this is not right. There's something wrong with this picture. So for example, when we see someone with a big smile or with big eyes, it's like, why do you look like that? What's happening? Or maybe there's like elongated limbs. I feel like that's a technique that they use very well in these movies. A strong example of this is the Bride in Black. It's this older woman, you think, but there's something off about it. It doesn't look quite right. And it turns out that they actually had a man under the makeup playing this character. That eventually ended up becoming part of the story, part of what this character was, and adding to what made this character so creepy and so terrifying. Creepy enough from far away, but then up close, and even we see with the child, the dancing boy, it's actually a man playing this character, and so again, it's like a little off. It adds that terror aspect to it. Even the makeup that we see on Josh in the second movie, he ends up getting an old age makeup because his body is like deteriorating as Parker Crane's soul is living inside of him. It's not like just to make him look old and friendly, like he looks creepy. And of course then the faces that he makes, his different expressions, adds to that, and that's what makes him scary. And again, it's that same thing of like, he shouldn't look like this. His body and everything else is not old, so to have this look to him makes it a little more scary. Even in like the movie Dead Silence, which is like one of my favorite movies, they made Mary Shaw look so freaky because not only did she have like that scary old age makeup, but then they added the puppets to her, and when she made herself a puppet, and it was just ugh, gross, but she was a scary old lady too. They just know how to make an old age makeup look terrifying. But you also have some of the older characters, like I mentioned, Elise and Lorraine, are very caring and you feel safe with them and they're so sweet. So I think also to have that kind of juxtaposition is pretty interesting as well. But you know, they had more monstrous looks. Keyface, I think his name is, lipstick face demon. What I heard the story of that is like he literally smeared lipstick on his face, and it's almost like clown makeup to make him look more inviting to an innocent soul like Dalton to try to take over. So to know that he's like a clown adds a little more terror to him, because I don't like clowns either. The first movie in particular really trained me on how to watch horror movies. And what I mean by this is to always check your surroundings. Always look in the backgrounds. You never know what's gonna happen, what might be there, standing there, looking at you, ready to get you. We see this right from the title sequence. They prepare you for that immediately. And this is most notable for me, the moment where I feel like where I kind of learned my lesson, how I say it trained me, was when we were watching it for the first time. It was the part when she was playing the nice music, and then by the time she was entering the kitchen, and then you can see the dancing boys just standing in the corner. At that point, as we were watching it, I missed it. My dad was like, oh, did you see that? And the rest of us were like, no, what are you talking about? And so we all went back, and then we saw it. Even just knowing that I had missed it made it even scarier. Like, oh my god, it could have done anything, and I wouldn't have known. Ever since that moment, I've always checked the backgrounds of every movie, even if it's not a horror movie.
Thought I saw some feet.
I really think there are a lot of techniques used throughout these movies that are very well done. And they're often classic techniques or classic techniques with a twist. They're just refreshing to see in a horror movie. And it's part of what has made James Wan and Leigh Whannell like my favorite movie duo. Because I feel like they get it. They know how to make a good horror movie. That brings me to my excitement for Insidious 5, The Red Door. I am so excited for that. Ever since the first trailer came out, my love for Insidious just came back full swing. That is what led me to go rewatch all the movies. That is what led me to make this video in the first place. I just thought that trailer had it all. It was very well produced. It's much better than that first one I saw back in like 2010. It's a complete 180 from that moment, because it just brought me back to everything I love about the movies. I thought the sound direction for just this trailer fit the series perfectly and just brought me right back into it, and all the emotions I had from the beginning. The way that it had that rusty piano and also tiptoe through the tulips, I thought it was a perfect trailer. I cannot wait for this movie. And I'm really curious to see what's gonna happen in it. I'm interested to catch up with the Lamberts again, know what their life is like now. Is Josh still teaching? Did Renai ever make her hit song? What is Callie's personality like? We've only ever known her as a baby. Now she's gotta be like 10 or 11. Curious to see what she will add to the family. Josh and Dalton had the hypnosis on them that blocked their memories, but I feel like Renai and Foster will have a lot of trauma from everything that happened. So I wonder if they will touch on that at all. I can't wait to see this like clash or confrontation between Dalton and Josh against Lipstick Face Demon. I'm wondering if they will come back to that scene in the first movie where they're like in his lair. Now they have to face him instead of just escaping from him. Maybe. I don't know. The Lipstick Face Demon, he's like the face of the film series. So I'm curious to see what the conclusion of all of this will be. I do kind of hope that's not just Dalton and Josh, but that Renai, Foster, and Callie can assist in some way as well. Maybe that's not going into the further, but at least giving them strength from the outside or helping them come back. Because they have all been affected by this demon, and it would be nice to see them all contribute to getting rid of this threat. Now, the movie is titled Insidious, The Red Door, and each movie has had a red door. I think at one point they said it leads deeper into the further into the further. So I took it to be like, these are the doors that lead to the demon's lairs or domains or something. And so I am curious, like, we have seen these red doors throughout, so what is the significance of this one? How much of a role will it play? Especially after the last one with the keys, and I think he wanted to open all these doors. Will we see other demons and other red doors, or is it just like, is Lipstick Face's door the reddest door? Like, is he the strongest, or is there more? I have so many questions. Another thing I want to note that we saw in the trailer is it looks like at some point the Lambert family goes to a funeral, and my first thought was that it was Lorraine's funeral, that Josh's mom had passed away. And then while rewatching the movies, I noticed that dead mothers do kind of come in clutch at the end. The mother who passed away is the one who ended up saving the day and being that final ray of hope. So I wonder if that is the case and that Lorraine is the one who passed away, maybe we will also see her in the further. Hopefully not like permanently, but that she'll come and help. If not to save the day, like to see her with Elise moving on, like at peace, right? And as much as I want to see Specs and Tucker, it's not looking like they're gonna be a part of it. I'm hoping they'll surprise me because like Leigh Whannell was there. So if not having their characters in it, I do hope we can at least get some kind of update or like a photo or something just to see what they're up to or what they've been doing these 10 years. I wonder if they ever wrote the book that they talked about in the first one. Maybe we can see like the cover of it somewhere and their photos on that or something. I don't know. But the movies are known to have these little cameos. They often have a James Wan cameo. I don't think it's asking for too much. And then, did you know there's a spin-off coming too? I think I did know, but I forgot. But yes, there's a spin-off called Thread, an Insidious tale. What does that have to do with anything? I'm not sure where that one's going, but I am happy to see that this film series isn't going anywhere anytime soon. While many horror series can go a little crazy and off the rails with their numerous sequels, I think the Insidious series has done well to stay pretty grounded with what the original started, and I can't wait to see Insidious The Red Door, which comes out July 7th. Let me know in the comments what are your reasons for loving the Insidious franchise, and what you're looking forward to most in this latest installment. If you made it this far and liked the video, please consider hitting that thumbs up, and if you want to hear me raving more about shows, movies, or games, click that subscribe button and the bell to get all alerts. Hope to see you guys in my next video.